by acknowledging Emancipation Day. This year, the 160th anniversary of when President Abraham Lincoln signed a bill that ended the enslavement of more than 3,100 people here in the District of Columbia. And tonight, I'm reminded that one of the priorities included in our strategic roadmap is excellent schools. Our goal has always been to ensure families have access to high-quality public school options. With our new strategic roadmap, we are revising our application process with the goal of better capturing and anticipating citywide needs. And last month, staff shared the timeline and framework of our approach. Please check the website to review the recording or read the transcript to learn more. I'm excited that we will release the guidelines to open a new charter school this summer ahead of our fall application cycle. And while the guidelines cover applications for new or expanded schools, families have many great options when applying for schools this year. As in previous years, families submitted their applications in either February for high school or at the beginning of March for lower grades. Those families learned on April 1st the results of the lottery. I hope they got matched with one of their top choices. Now they have one more step to take. They need to accept their seat and enroll their child by May 2nd. Securing your child's seat by the deadline gives the school time to prepare for new students starting in the fall. And now I would like to turn it over to Dr. Michelle Walker-Davis.
Thank you, Chair Cruzy. You've heard me talk many times about the strategic roadmap, which guides our work and our priorities, and I'm happy to say that we're making good progress on it. As you know, the strategic roadmap is guided by its impact on three groups: our students, educators, and the families, the public, and all the partners that support school communities. This evening, I would like to talk to you a little bit about the efforts to support each of these three groups. First, our students. Our foundation has always been about giving our students the best education. COVID amplified the critical role schools play in our community. During the height of the pandemic, many public charter schools kept schools open. Leaders pivoted to remote learning and reconfigured classrooms to allow students and staff to be socially distanced. Many moved learning or eating lunch outdoors. School leaders today continue to take the necessary health precautions to ensure school buildings are safe spaces for students to learn. Last week, the CDC moved DC into the medium COVID-19 community level. We anticipated this would happen as another variant increased its spread. Schools may see an increase in cases, which could mean more testing, quarantines, and contact tracing. Our health consultants are working with schools as they consider adding additional mitigation strategies. And this may include schools deciding to reinstate or restart the conversation about mask mandates. Second, our educators. I want to thank all educators, custodians, counselors, behavioral health specialists, nurses, bus drivers, volunteers, and librarians. They work hard each and every day to teach our students, support their families, and engage with the community. They have a lot going on and are always showing up ready to serve our students. This month on our social media, we're highlighting the teaching and learning strategies educators are using in their classroom, and we really encourage everyone to follow us as we highlight those activities. And third is the families, the public, and all the partners that support our school communities. One of the priorities included in the roadmap is enduring partnerships, which means engaging more people more often in education. We started targeted outreach to ANCs to share our strategic roadmap priorities, how we plan to engage these public bodies, and how we would like for our schools to engage ANCs. I want to thank ANC Commission 5D for hosting us last week, and we look forward to presenting at other commissions throughout the year. Looking forward, we also plan to conduct focus groups and a survey soon to better understand the perspective of our families, community members, and other stakeholders, including ANCs. We strongly believe that their input is so very important as it can help inform any changes we make to our processes and practices. Thank you for allowing me to share these updates, and really look forward to the robust conversations that we'll have in the coming weeks and months.
Thank you, Dr. Walker-Davis. As we move through each agenda item this evening, Brianni, our moderator for the evening, will unmute DC PCSB staff or individuals speaking on behalf of a school. The hand-raising feature has been disabled. Individuals who have previously signed up to testify will be called upon. As a reminder, all written public comment is available to the public on our website. If you didn't sign up by sending your name to the public comment mailbox before this meeting, please submit your comments to thepublic.comment@dcpcsb.org or call our public comment line to leave a voicemail testimony at 202-328-2660 and select option 2. For now, let us hear from the witnesses who signed up to speak. I'd like to invite Commissioner Antoine Holmes to testify. And please keep your comments brief. As elected officials, you will have up to 5 minutes to speak.
Commissioner Holmes, you can unmute yourself.
All right, thank you. All right, well, good evening. I was going to go ahead and submit this as our decision memo, as we usually do for all other cases, but I'll just go ahead and read it for you all since I'm here, and then I'll go ahead and submit it later. Y'all give me an email address to do it. So I'll just say, at a regular scheduled and properly noted meeting on March 10th, 2022, the Advisory Neighborhood Commission, ANC 7C, considered the above referenced matter, which was the Riverseed Public Charter School. With 6 of our 7 commissioners in attendance, our commission voted 6-0 to oppose the license of the Riverseed Public Charter School due to the following reasons: 1, lack of community engagement; 2, special education; 3, facilities; 4, administration. The Riverseed Public Charter School reached out to ANC 7C and our community civic associations after receiving provisional approval from the Public Charter School Board. This method of engagement of the ANCs and our communities after receiving provisional approval is more akin to a checkbox effort than true community engagement. During the multiple presentations to ANC 7C and our residents, we found that the presentation to be lacking in details around special education, facilities, and administration. There were no comprehensive traffic plans were presented to address the community's concerns regarding the proposed location of a building, a residential building being converted for the school. So ultimately, ANC 7C does not support the Riverseed proposed school, as the applicants have not demonstrated how special education will be thoroughly managed, how they will be managing daily activities in the non-academic building, and the administration of the school. And then I'd like to thank you for allowing ANC 7C an opportunity to provide great weight on this matter. And I'm here for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Holmes.
Chair Cruzy, I believe we also have another public witness.
Thank you. I
Yes.
apologize. My mute wasn't unmuting.
Yes.
Please forgive me. Representative Ebony Rose Thompson, please come join us, and forgive me for this delay. Now I'm afraid to go on mute, but I'm going to have to figure out how to do that without being able to unmute again. Brianni, can we welcome her in?
Hi, Ms. Thompson. You're able to mute yourself.
Thank you. You will do a timer or something? Or no?
We, as an elected official, you have up to 5 minutes.
Right, but
I think we have a timer going.
Oh, okay. No, most places you come testify, you can see the timer
Oh, I'm
on
sorry.
the screen. So I was waiting for the timer to begin, but I'll begin. My name is Ebony Rose Thompson. I represent Ward 7 on the State Board of Education. Currently, I have the following thoughts. First, I submitted my letter about both Hebrew Academy and Riverseed when they received, I guess, provisional approval. And then I waited and I went to I think 2 ANC meetings. I tend to attend most of my ANC meetings, and I was a former commissioner. I used to represent 7FO2. I attended both ANC meetings that Riverseed came to present. I'm not surprised at all that the ANC has weighed in opposition. I listened to community members say that they did not, they felt like Burville should have been considered. They had concerns about parking. They had concerns about construction. They had concerns about the program. They had concerns about the ability of the teachers to run the school, because there's a difference between being a teacher and running a school. They had concerns about what the services that would be provided for special ed. I also spent, I think, 3 hours. I do work during the day. Much like the Public Charter School Board, being on the State Board of Education is very much a labor of love. So I took time out of my very busy day to have a conversation with the Riverseed people to better understand both their program and how they would administer what is not only a school for 20 children in Ward 7, but will grow to be much larger in several wards. And ultimately, we all know that every charter is its own school district. And they did not have a lot of great answers around providing special ed services in particular. I recall one of the founders said, well, if we get special ed children, we will take certain provisions. And I said, well, it's not an if, it's a when. I will tell you why I'm here again today, and I will tell you what I told them when I spoke to them over those 3 hours. I'm not someone, I am someone who testifies regularly. I am not a big sharer about my own experience. It is very important to me that students are provided for no matter where they show up or how they show up. Some people know that I went to the Seed School. Seed started with 20 students. I was in the first graduating class of Seed. I technically I did not join with the first class. When I came to Seed, there were 40 students. It is now, 300 or so students. That was back, I graduated from Seed in 2004. I can tell you that much like the 2 founders you have before you, we also had 2 founders. They were also very passionate. They were also absolutely well-intentioned. I do not question for a moment if they are good people, if they care about children, if what they thought they were doing were best for myself and my peers. I can also tell you, as an alumni of a school, of being like actually going through what it's like to build a school with students attending it and it being small and never having to run a school before, that we did not have everything we needed. I know people who had to leave because their mental health wasn't, that we just didn't have the services at Seed. I know that there are certain students who had sped things that Seed was not equipped to deal with. I know people who had traumatic experiences. I know a student who killed themselves, not on campus, but that should have been caught. And so I come from a place of well-intentioned is great, but we have to do better as adult people for children, because they don't pick their parents and they actually don't pick their schools. They don't pick their communities. They don't pick what they get to show up with. And while I think that the young ladies who are opening this school are absolutely inspiring as individuals, I think it is totally fair to question if they have all of the supports in place to actually support students no matter what they show up with. When I came before you and when my colleague came before you, not the same, all of the same members who are here now, we had one member who actually questioned if it was more important to support Black adults than it was to support Black children. And so it really hurts my heart that I can't say with confidence that if this school opens in the fall, no matter what a kid shows up with, not if they will be welcomed. I believe they will be welcomed, but if they will be supported on their journey, because Riverseed actually has the resources and knows how to do that from now as they grow. I hope you think about that. I hope you think about what supports they need. And I really think you should interrogate, and I use the word interrogate, the potential applicants that come before you more closely. Because for someone to say to me, if we get certain students, that scares me because it is a win. It is when you get students that come to you with all of the difficulties. So I'm happy to submit another written testimony, but I thought it was important to share my own experience and why, not just from a data perspective or from a representative perspective or from a pro-charter, pro-DCPS perspective, I feel so passionately about this. It is because I want young people to be supported no matter what they show up with and how they show up, because our job is to make sure they get to adulthood prepared. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Thompson. Okay, may I take a motion from the board to approve this evening's agenda? We move now to the public meeting.
I move to approve the April 18th, 2022 board meeting agenda.
Second.
Okay, take a roll call vote now. Jim Sandman,
Aye.
Rick Cruz,
Aye.
Leah Cruzy, aye, and Ricardo Ganjum has voted by proxy. The move is approved. Brianni, can we welcome Hannah Cousineau now?
I'll wait to begin before, I'll wait for the other members of the DC Wildflower team to join before I begin.
Welcome, Wildflower team.
Before I begin, is Maya joining us as well?
She is not.
Okay, and then I can start. Hello, everyone. My name is Hannah Cousineau, and I am a manager in the school performance department. DC PCSB staff recommends that the board vote to fully approve the 15-year charter agreement of DC Wildflower Public Charter School effective July 1st, 2022, and expiring no later than June 30th, 2037. And to approve Board Chair Leah Cruzy to sign the agreement on the board's behalf. The charter agreement includes the school's facility address at 913 55th Street Northeast. Over the past year, the school has met all conditions set forth in its decision letter, including securing a facility. DCPCSB received 16 public comments in support of the facility location and 2 against its full approval. Representatives from DC Wildflower Public Charter School are here to answer remaining questions.
Would you like us to begin, Hannah?
Yes, please. Rochelle, you can start with your opening
Great.
remarks.
I'm actually going to turn it over to Neil Campbell, our board chair. He's going to start us off.
Thank you, Rochelle, and thank you for having us here today. We're incredibly excited to be here. I just wanted to share a few quick words of gratitude, really, as we approach this meeting, and for all the work that has gotten us to this point. The first group of folks I want to thank are the families who put their trust in the vision that Zani and Ebony and Rochelle and our board and Maya have worked so hard to establish over the last couple years of writing our application and then getting really far down the road to be ready to open this fall. We're excited and we hope to be able to welcome more of your neighbors and friends in coming years. I want to thank Jennifer, who trusted our team to purchase her family's home to become the site of the Riverseed School. We know it's an unusual kind of home sale transaction, but it is a beautiful space that we think will provide a safe, welcoming, and engaging environment for all of the children that come to the Riverseed School. I want to thank Dr. Walker Davis and Hannah and others on the PCSB team and OSSI staff who were really responsive as we worked and requested the chance to move up this hearing so we'd be able to execute a purchase and be ready to accept students and welcome them on 55th Street in August and September. And I want to just really extend a whole lot of gratitude to the support we've had from the Wildflower Foundation to share so much, so many resources and supports and the investment of Maya Blankenship's time that helped create our board and really lead the application process. And we're so excited for the team that we have on our board and the experience of Rochelle Kimboko as our first executive director, the obvious preparedness and excitement that Zani and Ebony are bringing to launch the Riverseed School, and we're building out our team of supports that will support us, kind of our charter as a whole. And we have a wonderful student support partner who just joined our staff and is we are just incredibly excited that Dana Stiles has joined us. And then we also have welcomed Ashley, our finance and operations partner. So we are, for the size that we are starting at this fall, we believe we have a staff that is ready to hit the ground running and will be more than capable of supporting the students that whose families trust us and enroll, and that we have the expertise, the connections to, if we need further support, that we know where to go and how to acquire those services and supports for any student that walks in the door in August and September. So thank you to the board and for hearing us. And I look forward, if there's any other questions, myself and my colleagues would be happy to address them.
And I just wanted to give a moment if Ebony or Zani, either one of you wanted to add to that as well.
This is Ebony. Zani is traveling, so I will start. I would like to say thank you for the opportunity to make this dream a reality. And I look forward to answering the questions that are coming up and will be posed to us as we move forward as a teacher, as a DC teacher, and hearing what was said and understanding the success of the school as defined by the metrics that are in place to protect children and adults and families is important, but also by the people who will really be pouring into it, and our neighbors and our fellow Ward 7 community members. So I really look forward to making this school a success for all of us and having the opportunity to ask and answer hard questions to really make sure we're prepared. That's something as a teacher I really value, and as a person. So just thank you again.
Zani, anything?
Hello, everyone. Just returning home. I do have some words I would like to share. Let me just find, okay. And again, these are really just expressions of gratitude. So I just want to say thank you for all of you with the Public Charter School Board for believing in our vision of teacher-led, intentionally small Montessori schools. Thank you for your flexibility to make sure that we are well prepared to welcome our children and families this August. As a Ward 7 resident, a career Montessori educator, and a parent of school-age children, I am thrilled to continue my work and bringing joy, laughter, and learning to children and families, this time in my own community, using an approach that has been proven to build critical thinking, independence, a joy of learning, and collaborative work skills. I would also like to thank the various parents, community organizers, educators, and librarians who have provided us with advice, contacts, and support as we manifest this dream that we have long held to make schooling work for our children and our families. I also want to thank our friends at EdForward who have provided us with crisis advice, feedback on our plans, and resources to ensure a strong and well-informed start. I'm excited to return to centering my work around children and families with this new model. And I am so thankful to the families that are placing their trust in us to educate their children. I have nothing but gratitude for all of the learning I have experienced and will continue to experience as we transition from our planning year to hopefully our first year of operation as the Riverseed School, which will be the first DC Wildflower micro school site. In closing, I would like to share a quote by Bell Hooks as I reflect on my journey from noticing some of these issues that we have all been talking about with education, to elevating it, to now implementing this new vision for education. To be truly visionary, we have to root our imagination in our concrete reality while simultaneously imagining possibilities beyond that reality. I'm really looking forward to imagining new beginnings for us and other educators and families and children that will attend the Riverseed School. Thank you.
So I have a question, Chair Cruzy and others, if you would like me to respond to the public testimony from Commissioner Holmes and Representative Thompson, or if you want to just have us respond to your questions. I can do either.
Thank you for that, and please excuse my technical difficulties here. I think we would appreciate your responses, and we may follow up with some of our own questions.
So I want to start by actually a great deal of appreciation for the candor with which all of our ANC folks and community members and Representative Thompson have kind of responded to our plans. We as we were thinking about specific concerns, so one that I really want to address, and I think Neil definitely spoke to it, but the concern that we are, for example, unprepared around special populations. I know that one of the conditions that was placed for us was that we pretty quickly respond with an updated plan for special populations, which we did do in July. And that is information that we have shared with both the ANC and Representative Thompson. We both shared a memo that we prepared, as well as talked about how our model has been vetted both by special education professionals, as well as whom we have on our board, in addition to others, and that we feel very confident, based on our teaching experience as well, that the model is sound, that the resources are effective, and we have even gone so far as to negotiate relationships with service providers. So we have not only a student support partner who has a SPED and EL background, but also have relationships in place for our mental health services and for related services providers, both of whom are coming very highly recommended by other Montessori schools and who are excited to work with us. So that's one thing around special population. So I feel very confident in that. Another area of concern that we've talked about was lack of community outreach. And I think that this is especially difficult. I know I don't disagree with Commissioner Holmes that the process that we go through with the charter school board does not necessarily allow for the kind of engagement that would be more reassuring for folks at the ANC level. I do know, however, and I think we've shared with you before, that Ebony and Zani have spent significant amount of time in Ward 7 building communication and relationships with folks like Dreaming Out Loud, like the librarians, like the rec centers, like Ladera Park Garden rather, and they have some very, very strong partnerships in place based on those relationships. We have a lot of community support that is perhaps not coming in the form that the ANC was looking for. However, when we were advised by our single member district commissioner that she really thought we should go get some tangible support in response to what the ANC said, we did that. And we ended up with doing door-to-door outreach, getting signatures from folks who were immediate neighbors, from Ward 7 residents in paper, and then getting even online, getting another, I think it was 35 or 40 signatures of folks who are Ward 7 residents that we reached through other networks. So there is support, and you heard that support expressed as well last month. The families and partners are very much in support of the work. I would also name, Neil mentioned Jennifer and her daughter, who have been incredibly patient with this process from their perspective. They could have sold the house months ago, but instead waited, because they also can see how the vision of their family's home will develop there. So they're excited about that. And then I think in terms of responding to concerns around parking and construction and noise, security are some of the things that we've heard. We are doing our best to respond to those in a manner that reassures the neighbors. Some of those, I think we're hoping to rent spaces from Church of Incarnation, which is on the corner near us. But in fact, there is plenty of parking on 55th Street that is adjacent to our property line. And we have a single driveway where we could park 1 or 2 cars if we needed to. There are only 5 of us on staff parking. There was a concern around security. We actually are not going to be a high security risk in the sense of having equipment that people would want, but we do plan to do perimeter cameras and alarms just as anybody would if they had a building in that neighborhood. And if we can partner with our neighbors to make sure that we're covering spaces that are adjacent to their homes, we're happy to do that as well. We did reach out to DDOT, and actually DDOT is doing a traffic study for us, or traffic safety investigation. So, we're awaiting the results of that. We may end up with a school zone or no parking signage, but they will certainly let us know if they have a concern about the traffic. Part of the getting the permits for the permits is probably the wrong word. Part of looking at the zoning was ensuring that there was adequate space. So that is not in terms of actual flow and along the street. We've been assured that that's not a zoning issue. So I definitely want to acknowledge those concerns and but also say that we will continue to work on those over the next couple months as we are developing. And then Ebony is reminding me to mention that, we are also not ever going to be a large school. So we are, we're talking about 18 children in the next year, upwards of, mid 50s if we, when we get to scale in 7 years. So over that time, we will certainly be able to figure out ways to stagger arrival and dismissal, to work with families to park up the street and walk down, et cetera, so that neighbors are not feeling really pinched at any time of the day because of our traffic. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, and I think I will just quickly touch on co-location and considering Burville. So in looking, I do want to acknowledge that Burville has had some declining enrollments. However, they're pre-K3 and pre-K4 slots, which is where we would be kind of competition for them in this next year. They are filling those. They haven't had to go to their, to a wait list. They've been able to fill their classes. And I think that while we are definitely interested in the possibility of co-location in the future in one of the other schools in this short time frame, it's probably unlikely that we would have been able to negotiate a co-location agreement with a DC public school with only 6 months to work. Knowing that this is a concern for other ANCs, and if we can find ways to do that, it is definitely our desire not to waste space and to be good partners as much as we possibly can. One of the reasons that we were looking at residential places in the first place was that most of the commercial spaces that were available to us didn't really have any green, didn't have access to green space, didn't have it directly, if at all. And so that was a really high priority. And that's part of what drove us to looking at residential properties. And that may be that may also be a good reason to co-locate with DC schools if there are spaces where we can do that. So I don't know if you have other questions.
Thank you for this, Ms. Kimboko, and thank you for the entire founding team for your presentation this evening. I think that we do have some questions, and I'd love to kick off by, thank you, that was thorough, but asking also if you could kind of recount for us the steps that you have taken to engage your single member district and the broader ANC. And then I want to pass it on to my fellow board members.
Zani or Ebony, do either one of you want to respond to that, or do you want me to go through I'm happy to. But.
Sure, I would just, we have something written down just to help. So I want to make sure I get dates correct, but apologies, I did not have it in front of me before beginning. So I will walk through a timeline, starting with, the process leading up to approval, or leading up to our conditional approval. So last year, Zani and I were in the classroom as we were beginning to work on our planning of the Riverseed School. In that time, we were in the community, but I just wanted to remind everyone that we were looking broadly in Ward 7 and 8. When we began on that journey, the initial ask or reaching out to the State Board of Support, or specifically Representative Thompson, was in November 2020. When we, got the feedback of the first time to test, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember what this is, the first board meeting last April, and we heard some of the concerns that were raised then for the entire charter. This was before the Riverseed School had a name and more of a focused vision. We, launched into like engaging more deeply when we began going to, I'm so sorry, when we began going to Ed Council meetings and just learning of more events, going to, things again broadly, board 7 and 8, as we learned them, we would attend them. As we began to identify this home in November, that's when we specifically began reaching out to our ANC, which the single member ANC for 7C06 is Victoria Clark. November is also a time that we had in-person introductions with Representative Thompson and Commissioner Holmes. And this was through the State Board of Education listening session that was hosted at the Deanwood Recreation Center. Following that, we began attending ANC meetings at that same time for the 7C area. When we began learning about more organizations, civic associations, Capitol U, Deanwood Citizens Association, we also began attending those all around the same time in November. December 1st is when we followed up with our ANC, the chair, Commissioner Holmes. In January, we began to, we had a chance to make an announcement during an ANC meeting. And I should backtrack to mention that we first asked to get on the docket in November when we were just learning about who our commissioners were and how to get more involved. And we made that request to our single member district. In January is also when we, after making an announcement, we had our first presentation with the executive committee, which is when we gave our general overview of the Riverseed School. February was when we had a presentation where we went over the special education plan, because that is what came up in our general body meeting. And Rochelle, you could probably walk through more thoroughly all of the points we covered, and hearing feedback that we received from not just Representative Thompson and Commissioner Holmes, but also President Jamel Sanders of the DCA, Marcus Smith, who is the education chair of the Deanwood Citizens. Sorry if I keep saying DCA, I mean Deanwood Citizens Association. And we also invited Capitol View Civic Association, as well as some neighbors to that meeting. And February is also when we came back to present to the executive committee of ANC 7C, specifically regarding our special education and special populations memo and plan. And that was our last public presentation to with the ANC. And yeah, Zani and Rochelle, please feel free to jump in if I left anything out.
Yeah, and I will just add that I attended last week the ANC meeting, and that is where in that meeting, Commissioner Holmes, so in March when we presented to the general body, the commissioners decided not to write a letter of approval because that was what we were asking for in March. They did decide not to do that, and asked if there was a possibility of kind of slowing down the process, which was something that we did turn around and talk with Hannah and the team about. At that point, it didn't make a lot of sense to slow down the process because the vote was that following Monday. And then we knew that we had this meeting in April. So last week's ANC meeting, I think there was a concern that we had continued to move forward, even though I think we had clearly messaged that that was our intention, barring anything from the charter, from you all letting us know that we should stop or slow down. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. I want to open up the mic so that other board members can ask some questions as well.
Thank you, Chair Cruzy. Just as I'm sort of synthesizing the feedback that we received earlier and in the written testimony as well in advance. I think there are three buckets, some of which you've addressed. One is the programmatic and the sort of special education preparedness, and I do have a follow-on question to that. The second is just the neighborhood concerns or the ANC concerns around construction, security, et cetera. You've addressed those to my liking, I think, but other board members may have questions. The third, and that I'd love you to reflect on, is just, and this came up in the context of Burwell, but just a general sense that this program is not needed. And I'd just love to maybe start there, and then I do have a follow-on question about special education, but what you have heard from the immediate community, but then the broader community as you've recruited, engaged, as to how this program will fit into the larger landscape of options that are available to families, particularly families in the community.
Sonny, I would love for you to respond to that.
I would like to share a few things. Number one, and I'm sure some of you have heard this story before, but as well as an educator, I'm a parent, and I've lived in Ward 7 for the last 5 years. And to me, placing the Riverseed School in Ward 7 was very personal to me, because currently there is only, when we think about Montessori, there is only one Montessori option, which is really a Montessori pocket program at Knoll Elementary, which is where my children attend, and that is it. So when we think about creating opportunities for more children, also thinking about creating opportunities for other educators like myself to both live and work in their communities, I think there is a stated need for the Riverseed School. As many of us know, Montessori is hugely popular across the district. Many Montessori schools have extensive waiting lists. It's a pedagogy, it's an approach that is very popular. However, as I said before, there's only one option in Ward 7. And so upon talking to other families, one thing that has continued to come up when I talk to other families, both families that are interested in attending the Riverseed School, other families that have children, my children's age and my neighbors as well, is that many people feel as though, for better for whether this is correct or not, and I don't think it's correct, but many people feel as though they have to leave our community to attend other schools. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's fair. I think everyone should be able to go to school in their communities. I feel as though people should have multiple options in their communities. And I can say right now, when it comes to Montessori, there really are not many options here. So I do feel like there is a stated need for that. During the pandemic, we've also noticed a rise in a desire for a more intimate setting for education. We've noticed a desire for more outdoor learning opportunities. We've also heard from other educators that they want to have more opportunities, to have more autonomy. They want to be able to do other things so they can grow in their craft. And I believe that the Riverseed School is an example of that. I believe that DC Wildflower is a model that is allowing that to happen. And I believe that where we are being situated in Ward 7 in the Deanwood neighborhood, I think it's a perfect place for us to start and to do something new. So I definitely do believe that there is a stated desire for schools like DC Wildflower, schools like the Riverseed School to be in existence. And this is what we heard at our facility hearing and what we continue to hear from both families, community members, and others.
Yeah, I will just add a little nuance to that as well, which is that the program at Knoll that was coined by the principal, the term pocket program. we got it from him, and also only eligible to people who live in boundary for Knoll. So it's not as if that's widely available in Ward 7. It's really it is a neighborhood school, and if you happen to be in that neighborhood, you have access to Knoll, but you don't necessarily have access to it if you're outside of Knoll's specific area. Also wanted to point out that one of the things that we're doing, which is different from some of the other Montessori schools, is the at-risk preference. And we really are leaning into the desire to situate, to prioritize families who are at risk for this more intimate learning environment, right? For a place where they actually are recruited by their teachers and know who their teachers are going to be. And those teachers are also making critical decisions about how the school will operate within the bumper rails, obviously, of the charter school kind of infrastructure. But it is really unique for you to have this opportunity to be in community with your school leader and your teacher in this way that we're doing. I don't know, Ebony, did you want to add anything before we?
No, we can go to the next question. Thank you.
Okay.
So just on the specific question I have on special ed, I think that there is the allure for me when I did vote in favor of this a year ago was the small school and the very intimate environment and finding a way to bring that to as many communities that want that experience and parents who want that experience for their children. Ms. Thompson pointed out a very important component of our charter authorizing, which is you're not just a school, you're an LEA, and you'll be responsible for supporting students with special needs. As a new school, you will have all new students who you don't necessarily know terribly well. On top of that, given that you are bringing in a class of pre-K3, pre-K4, as I understand it, at the start of the year, those students are less likely or almost assuredly have not yet been identified with any challenges that they may have. So the point about your preparedness for 1 or 5, which may mean 20 to 25% of your enrollment having needs, having likely is a really, really important discussion point. So would just love a little bit more on if 25% of your enrollment in August does demand special needs that they deserve and different resources that they'll require. How are you thinking about that? And specifically that context, I get all the resources and the way you've brought in experts. It's exactly what you should be doing, but practically on August 27th or whatever the date is, when all you
so this is one of the places where I'm really excited about our team. All of us have experience working in schools, in Montessori schools as I'll back that up. All of us have been early childhood educators. So all 5 of us, so even those of us who are in the back office have experience with early childhood. I was an elementary teacher, so I had first graders and, first through third, also was the assistant head of school in a school that started with pre-K3 and pre-K4 students. So I'm very familiar with how, what kinds of special needs emerge and can anticipate. I think with the 5 of us can pretty readily anticipate what are going to be some of the most frequent needs: speech, OT, PT, those kinds of things for 3 and 4-year-olds. Additionally, Dana Stiles, who's coming to us, also was a special education teacher. So she and responsible for special education administration in her in previous roles. So she's coming with that perspective of what is expected legally, and really is excited about figuring out how to mesh that then with Ebony and Zani's perspective as Montessorians, and how we prioritize early identification and support and intervention. So it's really our strong hope that our strong experience, I should say, that with good intervention. So we say hope, but really we all know that it's true that early intervention and really getting in early to work with students can help head off further special education needs. So that's one thing. The second is that part of the plan is really to start doing assessment, universal screening, and then more in-depth assessment this summer. So we won't arrive on August 27th without having a really good idea of what is happening with the students that we have enrolled. And in addition, we'll do home visits. That's something that Ebony, Zani, and I all have in our tradition. I think that Dana also has it in her, in her tradition. So there's a real expectation that we will have had an opportunity to kind of seek out sniff out where, where there will be some concerns and to be then prepared for that in the classroom. And I will say it again, there will be five early childhood experienced, educators in the building. 2 of them will be in the classroom immediately, but the rest of us will just be upstairs. So there really is a strong, especially in this year, kind of a ridiculous proportion of people who are available to support. And that's another thing that will really work to our advantage in this first year. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the thinking about starting with pre-K 3, 4 instead of starting with kindergartners first off.
Sure. So I am answering this because I am the early childhood educator at the Riverseed School. So I'm certified to work with 2.5 to 6-year-olds. And special education is also something I'm very passionate about, of meeting all children's needs with that understanding of when our youngest learners come to school, as Rochelle has already said, they often don't have IEPs or even 504s, that it takes them a while to actually receive services if they are in need of services. And something that, is really at the forefront of our minds right now, which I'm so glad, I don't know if you saw my face when you said hope, Rochelle, that I was like, because we're starting the planning now. And once we made the hire of hiring Dana to really look at what we, and I'm going to switch to I statements, have learned working in public Montessori, working in schools and teaching through 2 years of a pandemic and what's coming about. Something I'm very excited about is being a part of a community of practice of really all educators, not even just DC educators, but working across sectors, Montessori educators, Reggio traditional educators in DC as well as PG County. And that exchange of wisdom of really not just leaning on when you are working towards getting a child some formal level of special education of supports, but also knowing what you should be doing, even if that doesn't come, even if a diagnosis doesn't come, even if if a family doesn't consent to services, like having a strong practice is very important. And as Rochelle also mentioned, us working with the home visits and having the chance to start meeting our students now, that is really so powerful and important and crucial to us as educators. Typically, in my experience teaching in DC, the most time I've had to meet a child before the school year began is, once in the summer is kind of like an introductory, not knowing if a student will even be in my class, and then not again until the week before school. But since we're forming relationships, real relationships with children right now, we're seeing what we can pinpoint. We're seeing, where they're, what conversations families should begin to have, with our our student support partner, as well as just taking notes and collecting data on what their needs might be. There was something else. When Representative Thompson was reading her testimony, she was also raising concerns about teachers' ability to administer schools and work as administrators. And I believe that this is related to special education and really being prepared to serve children from day one, in our case, before day one, in the sense that we have not only a team of 5 experienced early childhood educators, but we're also growing at a pace that is very, very, very generous to us as DC educators. So the fact that we're going to start with 18 students and we'll have 1 classroom for 2 years really gives us a lot of room to just really make sure that we have strong plans in place for each children, whether they were qualifying for special education, each child, whether they're qualifying for special education services or not, leaning into that intentionally small model that, no child is falling through the cracks, or any of those, kind of patterns, I guess, that children can fall into. And there was something else I want to say, but I don't want to ramble. So thank you.
Thank you for this. Jim, did you have questions?
You and Rick covered the subjects that I intended to ask about. I'm satisfied with the responses to your questions from the school representatives and in addition, what they covered in their presentations. I'm prepared to vote.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Rick, thank you for your questions. I think I just wanted to have one follow-up question, and this is something that we ask schools, not just at this point, but later on in the journey, which is through this community engagement process you did to prepare your application, which for me had been compelling and part of the reason why I supported the application last year. You chronicled for me all the conversations you've had since during this planning year. Can you share with us how those conversations may have informed and may have even changed how you've made some decisions and how you've approached getting to this point, and what you plan to do over the next couple months?
Sure, I can start, and Ebony and Rochelle, if there's anything else you would like to add. So we knew since last April how important it was for us to actually listen to the needs of what people had and the concerns that they had. We knew that from last year when Ebony Rose, when she wrote her testimony, or when she spoke against our testimony. Oh, I'm sorry, not spoke against our testimony, spoke against our charter, that if we want to be in Ward 7 or Ward 8, that it was going to require us to do more to make sure that we're really reaching people, and that we're also constantly like reflecting and questioning, like what are their concerns? What can we do to respond? And so the first thing that we heard last April was how important it is to actually be out in the community, not to just create something new, but to really think about what is already present. How can we better support the existing structures that are there? And so as a result, we did make sure that we were attending the meetings. We did make sure that we were, Ebony has volunteered with several of the organizations. We did make sure that on the weekends that we were showing up to show our faces, so people knew that we were to be taken seriously, that we do want to serve children and family here. After our conversation that we had in January with Ebony Rose, some other members of the ANC and the Deanwood Citizens Association, when there were questions about special education, we took all those concerns very seriously. And we went back and we said, hey, we need to know who our providers are going to be. We need to make sure that our providers are used to working with young children. And that's exactly what we did. We went back and we made sure that people looked at our plan and like really looked at it and took it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that it was that we were going to be able to do what we wanted to do, and that we we're going to put into place people and know who we're working with, to make sure that on day one, that, you know, on day one, if we do have children that need speech, we already have our provider. We've already done our home visits. We've already talked to the families. We've already done our screenings. And so some of those things, which I can say as an early childhood teacher, may not happen until the very end of the school year. We can shave off months of that, right? By coming into the school year with already all of that information. We also heard with our community engagement, when we presented to the ANC, we did not know, honestly, in the beginning about all of the protocols. We were very humble. We went back and we made sure that we were talking to the right people, that we were presenting it in the way that we needed to present it. That was another learning and growing experience. We received so much wonderful advice from our single member commissioner, Victoria Clark. And when she told us, she was like, hey, you know, it's nice that you have these ideas. It's nice that you actually went through and you got more feedback on your special education, but you really need to talk to people, go door to door and talk to people. So we took that advice as well. We went back out, we went door to door. We talked to people. We went out in the community to grocery stores, to parks, to really make sure that people in the community actually want us to be there. And so we did that directly because of what we were told. when it came to parking, we were listening to what were the true concerns, and the concerns about parking and safety and security, and even what's going on with some of the homes in our neighborhood with construction. Again, we took that information and we decided, we are on this conversation with the church down the street to see what we can do with parking. We took that information to the builders and said, hey, security is an issue. What can we do? And so I really am very grateful for the fact that we have received so much feedback and we have had so many people pushing us along the way, because I really do believe that has made us stronger. And I do feel more confident about special education after those meetings and after being pushed. I do feel more strongly about what we can do with parking and security because of how we've been pushed. And I do feel more comfortable going into the community knowing that I have spoken to the next door neighbors. We have spoken to people across the street. So, and I really do hope that we continue to get that feedback. That is what we want. We continue to have people let us know how we are showing up so we can continue to do better. So again, this is just the beginning of our relationships. This is just the beginning of the conversations. And so we really, truly hope that the constructive feedback continues so we can make sure that we're continuing to do better.
Thank you for that. Board members, if we have no further questions, I will accept a motion to proceed.
I move to fully approve the charter of DC Wildflower Public Charter School and approve Board Chair Leah Cruzy to sign the charter agreement on the board's behalf.
Second.
Okay. Motion and second. Roll call vote. Jim Sandman.
Aye.
Rick Cruz.
Aye.
I have a proxy vote aye from Ricardo Ganjam, and I am also an aye. Congratulations, Team Riverseed Wildflower. Anna, you're not going anywhere tonight.
No, I am not. I might be joined temporarily by my 5-month-old son. So if you do hear a little baby noise in the background right now, that's him. It's about to be bedtime soon.
That would be wonderful. Wow.
He's having fun. Up next, I know we have achievement prep. So I'll wait for their team to join and then I'll introduce them.
Well, while we wait, I just want to make sure that I share out that we would like the school, this is Riverseed Wildflower School, to be coming back to us in June to give us an update. We'll make sure, I think we may have communicated that to them separately, but want to make sure we put that on the record. Welcome, Ms. Wright.
Hello, good evening. How are you? We should have Sarah Lewis on the line.
Okay, Ms. Wright and Ms. Lewis, it's I believe it's just the two of you, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right, I can get us started. Hello again. DC PCSB staff recommends that the board issue a notice of concern to Achievement Preparatory Academy Public Charter School for failing the Mystery Caller Initiative, which is part of DC PCSB's open enrollment policy. Per this initiative, all charter schools are called and asked questions about enrolling a student with disabilities or an English learner student. Achievement Preparatory Academy Public Charter School provided a non-compliant response in 2 rounds of calls regarding enrollment of English learner students. If the board issues the notice of concern, the school will receive further mystery calls in upcoming weeks. If it provides appropriate responses on these calls and attends a session of the Registrar Professional Learning Community on May 24th, DC PCSB staff will recommend the board lift the school's notice of concern at its June board meeting. Members of the school are here to answer your questions.
Hannah, I have a question for you first. So there will be calls again in the coming weeks?
Yes, for the 4 LEAs that are eligible to receive a notice of concern. Tonight, we will make additional mystery calls to those schools in the coming weeks.
And what is the protocol for the additional mystery calls? It particularly, what if the first time you call, the response is wrong? Either the response is inadequate or it doesn't comply with the obligation to provide necessary services for special education or English language learner students.
Thank you. Yeah, we are looking to gain multiple correct responses. And so if we come across a non-compliant response, that would restart our count, and it may delay the lifting of the notice of concern.
Can you say more about that? Say the first call, the school fails. What happens?
We would. That's a great question. I'm trying to remember if that has ever happened to us before. In the event of that, we would I think have an internal conversation first amongst staff. And what I would assume would happen is that we would pause those mystery calls for a few weeks and then resume. So the notice of concern would stay in place. It only gets lifted if there is a pattern of only compliant phone calls. Was that satisfactory?
Yes. Well, yes and no. That is what your policy currently provides for. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep.
I understand that's what the policy provides for. And the policy was adopted in 2012, as I recall.
Yep. It's a pretty long-standing policy of ours.
Okay. I just want to go on the record before we just start this discussion and the discussions with the other schools to say that I think this is a really serious matter. Every school has a legal obligation to provide special education and English language learner services that comply with the law, and the school has an obligation to provide accurate information about those services to any parent who inquires, and to do it right the first time. I think that this policy, I understand you're implementing a policy that was adopted some years ago. I find no fault with that. I think it's the wrong policy. I think it's far too lenient. I think it's protective of schools and not adequately protective of parents. I have two concerns. One, despite its name, the Mystery Caller Program, it's not a mystery. As I understand it, every school gets 4 warnings before the mystery calls start. There was a notice that was sent out to all schools in December, and as I understand it, there were 3 notices in the Wednesday bulletin, in consecutive Wednesday bulletins in January about this. I've never heard of a secret shopper program or a mystery caller program that gives the recipient of the calls 4 warnings before the calls begin. And I don't think that's an accurate reflection of the real experience of parents who are asking for information. I think the purpose of the mystery caller program should be to replicate as accurately as possible the real experience of a real parent calling for information. I can't imagine a parent who calls the school 4 times to say, I'm going to be calling you, asking for information, be ready. That doesn't happen. They call once, and they depend on getting accurate information in compliance with the requirements of the law the first time. So I don't think the policy should give any warning. The law doesn't provide for a warning. I don't think the policy should. And second, as I understand it, any school that provides information that is inaccurate or not in compliance gets a second chance. They get do-overs. The parent who gets inaccurate information on that first call or is told that the school isn't providing services that they're obligated to provide is very unlikely to get a do-over. They're not going to call back in the hope that they might get a different and better answer the second time. Once they get that bad information in response to the first call, they're likely to give up on the school and say that school isn't able to serve my student and to look elsewhere. So if the parent doesn't get do-overs as a practical matter, why does the school? So I think the policy should provide no warning and require an accurate response the first time. I think that's what parents are entitled to every time. So I would strongly urge that the current policy be revisited. I guess I'd make a final point. I think that the experience here and the way in which the protocol is currently implemented in compliance with the policy is not helpful to charter schools. I think it feeds the narrative that charter schools don't do their fair share of educating special education students and English language learners, and they leave them to DCPS to handle. It's not fair to the schools that are doing a good job of serving all students and giving accurate information to parents to have a policy that permits schools to get it wrong and get another crack at it.
Chair Cruzy, if I might just say a couple of responses to Mr. Sandman. I totally underscore the importance that you raised about us getting it right. And the intent, as you well know, behind the policy is to support schools to get it right. We certainly are open to looking at any changes in that policy, maybe to provide less flexibility over time. And I want to point out, as you well know and other board members do, that this is actually the only effort like this across the city. Whether we're doing it well and there's room for improvement, I would acknowledge that, and we'll certainly work with staff to improve, but we actually don't have a window into what interactions parents have at traditional public schools, because there is no such mystery caller initiative at DCPS or OSSI or other bodies where parents engage on information on schools. And so I would totally agree with you that we all collectively need to get it right the first time, that there is a disservice when a parent calls one of our charter schools and does not get the right answer and perhaps doesn't return to that school or maybe any other charter school for that matter. And I also know that this is actually an initiative that I would hope others would model so that we have a better window into interactions across other public schools. So I absolutely heard your comments, agree with the sentiments behind them, and we'll work with the team to see how we can improve that program. And it is also the reason that we felt that it was particularly important to proceed with issuing these notices of concern this year, despite many of the other things that we gave flexibility and adjustments to in our policies during COVID and the pandemic. This one was absolutely too important not to bring forward, and at the risk of perhaps exposing ourselves in a way that you said that might do a disservice to charter schools, we still thought it was important to follow through with this and have this conversation and to hear directly from our LEAs about the efforts that they're going to make to ensure that this doesn't happen again at their sites and hopefully at other sites. So thank you for those comments.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate the effort here. I don't want that to be lost.
This is exactly the right prelude to this next set of conversations we need to have here. So thank you, Hannah, for the introduction. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Dr. Walker-Davis. And Hannah, I'll send the mic back to you.
For me, just to pass it back over to Achievement Prep. Would you guys like to make any comments before the board asks their questions?
I would. Thank you. Good evening. I am Sarah Lewis, the interim CEO for Achievement Prep. Thank you certainly for your due diligence in this process and the opportunity to address the concern. As Mr. Sandman has stated, as a public charter school, Achievement Prep is open to all scholars. And whatever the need, we are committed 100% to welcoming and supporting every scholar in our care. And any response or understanding that even alludes to the contrary is completely unacceptable. Our process has always been clear. We are deeply disappointed, and we're deeply disappointed to hear of our callers' experience, as this has never been the case for our organization since the inception of this initiative. Regardless, though, upon initial notification of these calls, there were 3 key steps that were taken to address the presented concerns. The first was immediately pulling our operations team, including our main office coordinator, who is a general participant on the line if we do need to tap into her knowledge moving forward on this call. But we pulled the entire operations team, recognizing that at times of day, there are subs, if you will, that may need to cover the front desk. And we wanted to make sure that everyone was aware and alerted to the processes that we have so that the calls are addressed appropriately. Secondly, we reviewed those processes for enrollment, and that includes everything from our home language survey, any records requests that are necessary to ensure that we provide the mandated services, as well as the language line that most LEAs are using so that we can provide any information that folks need, especially in their primary language. In addition, we went through several scenarios that would address either SPED or L questions that came from families, prospective families, returning families, et cetera. And of course, we plan to attend the required professional development. So there have been 3 to 4, including the professional development, 3 major steps that have been taken in this regard and in response to the notices of concern that we received. Certainly, we welcome any further questions that you may have tonight, but we also welcome further calls from the mystery call and all prospective families to really fulfill our mission and the aforementioned commitment. Thank you.
Let's open this up for questions. Thank you, Ms. Lewis, for the presentation here. Can you share with us so we understand there may have been a substitute at the front desk at this time. Can you share with us what other factors you think in the past may have contributed to staff being unable to respond appropriately to questions about enrolling language learners? And what kind of resources you're providing to ensure that doesn't happen again?
Certainly. So yes, aside from the coverage piece in conversations with our coordinator, they are very familiar with receiving the SPED calls. I could imagine that the ELL call may have taken her for a loop. What I do know for sure is that we've had some shifts and changes in our staffing across SPED and ELL as it relates to the point of contact. And so we did also discuss the importance of you not needing to be the expert in answering specific questions, but certainly the expert in getting them to the proper points of contact. And so as well as going through the scenarios and the processes, reviewing the processes, it was also aligning on the important, the points of contact that we need to send our families to. And so I would say those are the 2 major areas there, Leah.
Thank you. Other board members? Okay, thank you. Achievement Prep team. if we have no further questions, I will take a motion if board members are ready.
I move to approve the issuance of a notice of concern to Achievement Preparatory Academy Public Charter School.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Thank you. Jim Salmon,
Aye.
Rick Cruz.
Aye.
I have a proxy vote aye from Carter Ganjam, and I am also an aye. Next up.
Next up on our agenda, we have representatives from KIPP DC Public Charter School. So I'll wait for them to join and I'll begin.
I don't see Anthony Lewis on the line.
Ms. Whalen, do you know if Mr. Lewis is joining us tonight, or is it just you representing the school?
Yes, Mr. Lewis should be joining us.
Okay.
Click on him now.
Ms. Whalen, any chance do you know if he's joining us by phone tonight? We have one member joining us by phone. Maybe that's him.
I think it very well could be.
Okay.
You can unmute yourself for the dial-in number.
Mr. Lewis, do we have the right person joining us? Is that you at the 240 number?
Just let us know he's jumping on now.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Well, now that we have the team assembled, I can do introductions. DC PCSB staff recommends that its board issue a notice of concern to KIPP DC Public Charter School for failing the Mystery Caller Initiative, which is part of DC PCSB's open enrollment policy. Its Grow Academy and Legacy College Preparatory campuses provided non-compliant responses regarding English learner students in both rounds of calls. If the board issues the notice of concern, the school will receive further mystery calls in upcoming weeks. If it provides appropriate responses and attends a session of the Register of Professional Learning Community on May 24th, DC PCSB staff will recommend the board lift the notice at its June board meeting. Representatives from the school are here to respond to your questions. Ms. Whalen and Mr. Lewis, would you like to offer some opening remarks before we begin questions?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly Whalen. I'm the Senior Director of Accountability at KIPP DC. I think our experience with the Mystery Caller program echoes a lot of what our colleagues at Achievement Prep just shared. We always meet with our front desk staff before the opening of the Mystery Caller program to make sure they are clear on our enrollment policies and the open enrollment policy that exists in DC. And most of our staff have a lot of experience addressing questions related to special education and students with disabilities. So none of that felt particularly new to them. However, this clearly unearthed some gaps in knowledge among our front desk staff when it comes to educating students who are English language learners. We absolutely don't discriminate in enrolling in English language learners, and we have programming available for all students who require it, who are English language learners. But it is clear that our front desk staff at these two schools needed their awareness heightened about our program offerings to ensure that they were able to give appropriate information to parents. And so once we received warning about the notice of concern, we gathered the front desk staff at both of these schools and we walked them through an additional training. This is in addition to the one-on-one session they received earlier in the spring. They had an additional training with me where we walked through the open enrollment policy as it relates to students with disabilities and students who are English language learners. We addressed the fact that we do in fact have programming to support English language learners and what that programming looks like and how to share that with families in a way that they understand and in a way that is compliant with the policy. I think this was probably somewhat new information to some of these teams. We also identified through this process that there are more staff than ever who are supporting our front desk. So what we learned is that we needed to expand our training efforts to make sure it's not just the office managers, but it is operations associates, family liaisons. There are a variety of people who are answering calls related to enrollment matters that maybe haven't always answered calls in the past. So we made sure to include them in our trainings. We also provided front desks with a printable one-pager to have by the phone that addresses some of the main points, the main talking points related to open enrollment, so that whenever we do have substitute coverage or someone who maybe isn't typically answering the phones at the front desk, they have something to refer to. And even for our experienced staff who are used to answering these questions, but can always use a refresher, have something to glance at quickly that will help them make sure we are giving the correct information to our families. So those are the measures we've put in place after the notice of concern at these two schools. And I am happy to answer any additional questions the board might have.
Thank you for this, Ms. Whalen. I think, as you heard from the introductory conversation we had, just want to underscore the spirit of the exercise is that this is more than just an initiative, and that the training is not only in anticipation of meeting compliance, but so that parents do have comfort and access to all the services their children should be afforded at all public schools in DC. And want to double underscore that this needs to live well beyond any kind of initiative we have, whether given advance notice or a season that begins with this exercise or not. And expect that all the schools on this call understand that this is not just about when we give advance notice and as we revisit the policy that calls for that the spirit of this is anytime a parent calls, this is the kind of get information that they need to make an informed decision about the school for their child. I want to make sure other board members have the opportunity to ask questions or offer additional thoughts.
What Leah said. You started off by saying that you met with the front desk staff before the mystery caller program began. The front desk staff should be met with regularly throughout the year, anybody who's going to be dealing with parents on enrollment questions always 365 days a year should be prepared to answer the questions accurately.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And that's part of what led us to create the actual tangible materials for people to have in front of them for when these calls arise that maybe aren't directly in the enrollment window or in the mystery caller program, that anytime a family calls to inquire about what services we provide to English language learners and students with disabilities, we want that information to be accurate and to be in front of people and easily accessible so that we are always sharing the correct information at all points in the calendar year.
If no further questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the issuance of a notice of concern to KIPP DC Public Charter School.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Roll call vote. Jim Sandman.
Aye.
Rick Cruz.
Aye.
I have a proxy vote aye from Ricardo Ganjem. And I also approve. Thank you very much. Hannah, next up.
All right, next up, we have the team from Lee Montessori Public Charter School. I'll wait for them to join and then I'll give the official introduction. That was very speedy. Okay. Hello again. DC PCSB staff recommends that its board issue a notice of concern to Lee Montessori Public Charter School for failing the Mystery Caller Initiative, which is part of DC PCSB's open enrollment policy. Its East End campus provided non-compliant responses regarding English learner students in both rounds of calls. If the board issues the notice of concern, the school will receive further mystery calls in upcoming weeks. If it provides appropriate responses and attends a session of the Registrar Professional Learning Community on May 24th, DC PCSB staff will recommend the board lift the school's notice of concern at its June board meeting. Representatives from the school are here, and I will invite them now to share their remarks before moving on to any questions.
Thanks, Hannah. Good evening. My name is Chris Pensakowski. I'm the Executive Director of Lee Montessori, the only Montessori school, private or public, east of the Anacostia River. I'm grateful to be here with our board chair, Catherine Bellinger, and also on the line we have our East End school leader, Ebony Crawford, along with our Managing Director of Academics, Erin Hart, and Deputy Director of Operations, Josh McComas, who lead our enrollment work. And yeah, I'm here tonight to respond to the notice of concern that Lee Montessori received from the DC Public Charter School Board and to outline the steps we're taking to reinforce our commitments to offering high quality Montessori education to historically underserved communities. We were disappointed to learn that a staff member shared inaccurate information about our school enrollment policy during the 2 phone calls that were part of the Mystery Caller Initiative. As a public charter school in Washington, DC, Lee Montessori is tuition free, requires no fees or exams of any sort to attend, and is open to all students of all backgrounds, regardless of documentation status or language status. We sincerely regret that the information provided by our staff member on the 2 occasions did not make this policy abundantly clear. The findings of the Mystery Caller Initiative do not represent Lee Montessori's ongoing commitments to serving the needs of all students, regardless of language background or citizenship status. We understand the importance of sharing accurate enrollment information with all prospective families, and especially understand how inaccurate information can quickly become a barrier to enrollment for non-native English-speaking families. This is why we've taken the following steps to strengthen our existing protocols for responding to inquiries from prospective families. We've met with all staff who typically answer enrollment questions to review the district's public charter school application requirements and to remind them to continue encouraging students from all backgrounds to apply, regardless of native language or English or citizenship status. We've posted school application and enrollment talking points next to our front desk telephones for our staff to reference during discussions with prospective families. We registered staff for the May 24th PCSB Professional Learning Community meeting on communicating with families of diverse learners to reinforce best practices for successful engagement. And finally, we've requested that our IT service provider create an auto attendant function so that anyone calling with application questions is forwarded to our registrar, and anyone needing assistance in Spanish is forwarded to our Director of Equity and Engagement. We're taking the receipt of our first ever notice of concern as an opportunity to learn and a call to renew our commitment to making it abundantly clear to all district families that Lee Montessori is a welcoming and safe environment for students to learn and develop. Thank you for your time. We look forward to demonstrating these commitments going forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Pensikowski. I want to start by, I expect that you may have heard the last two schools that came before us and the conversation we had about the spirit of this practice, and that the spirit of the practice extends far beyond any particular season or effort around compliance. And while we are proud that this is a practice that may be unique to the public charter school sector, it is also one that we may be worth revisiting exactly how we implement it so that it fully meets the spirit of its intent. Thank you for what you shared. Can you reflect on what factors you think may have contributed to your staff having been able to respond appropriately?
Honestly, similar, again, I'm going to echo what our previous colleagues have said, and I think it's a lot related to a miss on our part in terms of training and consistent support. I think, Mr. Sandman pointed out that we should be consistently reminding staff of these requirements over and over again and abundantly, and I think we fell short on that, and we need to make sure that we are living up to our requirements as leaders of the organizations that we are all standing up for children that need our supports the most. I take it personally that this is something that happened on my watch, and I take responsibility for that happening.
Thank you. Other board members, any questions? Okay. If not, I will take a motion.
I move to Go ahead, Rick.
Okay. I move to approve the issuance of a notice of concern to Lee Montessori Public Charter School. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, thank you. And I'll take a roll call vote. Jim Salmon.
Aye.
Rick Cruz.
Aye.
I have an aye from Ricardo Ganjam by proxy vote and an aye from me. Okay, Hannah, next school.
Okay. Next up, we have Maya Angelou Public Charter School. I'll wait for their team to join as panelists, and then I will give the introduction. All right, I see that Maya Angelou is here. Hello for the final time. DCPCSB staff recommends that its board issue a notice of concern to Maya Angelou Public Charter School for failing the Mystery Caller Initiative, which is part of DCPCSB's open enrollment policy. Its Young Adult Learning Center campus provided non-compliant responses regarding English learner students in both rounds of calls. If the board issues the notice of concern, the school will receive further mystery calls in upcoming weeks. If it provides appropriate responses and attends a session of the Registrar of Professional Learning Community on May 24th, DCPCSB staff will recommend the board lift the notice of concern at its June board meeting. And at this time, I invite representatives from the school to share some opening remarks, and then we can open it to the board for further questions.
Thanks, Hannah. Good evening, Chair Cruzy and members of the Public Charter School Board, as well as Dr. Walker Davis. I'm Clarice Mendoza Davis, and I serve as the CEO of Maya Angelou and the C Forever Foundation. I'm also joined by our board chair this evening, Dr. Peter Leone. We also, like our colleagues that have gone before us,
take this issuance very seriously. Maya is committed to enrolling, welcoming, and serving all students at our Young Adult Learning Center, which we refer to as the YALC, as well as all of the other schools in our network. Our mission is to serve and care for Opportunity Youth, a group of young women and men composed of diverse learners, including ELL and undocumented students. We also know that our students in particular haven't always had the best experience with school prior to coming to us. So at Maya, we really strive to receive students and families warmly, and of course, by also sharing accurate information with them. After following up with our staff at the YALC, we truly believe that this notice of concern stemmed from a misunderstanding between our YALC enrollment specialist and the mystery callers, but also understand how our staff's mention of state-issued ID, which is a requirement to take the GED exam, which is an anchor program at the YALC. So mentioning the state-issued ID and then relatedly immigration status may have been misinterpreted as a barrier to open enrollment. And so we fully own that. Like our other colleagues, we have taken several steps to refresh our enrollment and registrar staff at the YLC, our school leadership team, and actually the broader school team at the YLC, including teachers and support staff. It's a very lean team, so at any time, anyone could be answering the phone at their desk in their classroom or the front office desk, and could receive questions from prospective students and families. And we wanted to make sure that everyone received a refresher on open enrollment practices. We also reviewed our set of talking points that help guide our staff in answering questions from new students in a way that promotes open enrollment. We are continuing our subscription with Language Line so that our staff can activate interpreter support for enrolling students and families on the spot. And we have also had our staff register for PCSB's Registrar's PLC session coming up next month, and we plan to engage in the PLC's monthly workshops going forward. With that, again, we're here to answer any questions and understand the gravity of this matter, given Maya's mission and how we intend to serve our students and our families.
Thank you, Ms. Mendoza-Davis, and welcome, Dr. Leone. I just want to repeat what I have shared with the last few LEAs, that the significance of this, and while we're proud that we may stand apart from public agencies elsewhere for having such an initiative and grounding in the experience of the families that we seek to serve, that this is not something is intended to, or should stand alone, or should feel as though it is a compliance activity that is isolated to a particular season. That said, I feel that you have addressed the questions I would have asked, which were around what factors led to this and what kind of steps do you look to take to ensure that this does not happen again. So appreciate the context that you've provided. Board members, do you have any further questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Mendoza-Davis and Dr. Leone. If we have no further questions.
I move to approve the issuance of a notice of concern to the Maya Angelou Public Charter School.
Second.
Motion and second. Jim Salmon.
Aye.
Rick Cruz.
Aye.
I have an aye from Ricardo by proxy vote, and I am also an aye. Thank you very much. Okay.
Chair Cruzy, as you transition to our next item, I just wanted to make sure that I acknowledge the staff for all of their work in the mystery caller effort, but also acknowledge the front desk staff at schools. I know there was a lot of conversation about not getting it right on the phone calls. I know how challenging that role may be, and I want to lean into our LEA leaders who acknowledge their responsibility in providing the training and support to those individuals to get it right. So just wanted to make sure that we acknowledge the hard work on the part of those staff members as well.
Thank you for that, Dr. Davis. I think that's a really important reminder. Board members, we move on now to the part of our agenda where we will vote on the consent calendar. Would any board member like to remove an item from the calendar for further discussion or state a recusal for the record? Seeing none, I will take a motion.
I move to approve all items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Jim Sandman,
Aye.
Rick Cruz.
Aye.
I have an aye from Ricardo Ganjum by proxy vote, and I am also an aye. Is there any new business? Seeing none, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the April 18th, 2022 board meeting.
Second.
Jim Sandman,
Aye.
Rick Cruz.
Aye.
I have an aye from Ricardo Ganjum by proxy vote, and I am also an aye. All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Hannah.